So yeah, maybe to start with, we can just talk about some of the things that have happened. So some of the things that I know that has happened is since the last one we did, Siraj did make a new example script that worked with Quandle.
Yep.
Did we ever get that onto the website? Like when you download the data, do you get that script?
We're testing it now. Just the Quandle API keys, making sure everything works.
Okay. So that'll just be one of the other example scripts. Yep. Okay, cool. And then there were others. There was also the Carlo Lepelaars sentiment script. Have we looked at that, adding that one, or?
I don't know if we're planning on like distributing it as well.
Okay, if that one uses free data, I think it does it? If it uses free data, that might be nicer than Quandle in some ways.
Yeah.
So, and then I heard that objectscience has made a really more involved version of JSON script. Have you heard of this?
No.
I think it was on Rocket Chat, but I heard about it yesterday in the Clubhouse Signals chat. It seems like he's taken JSON's script and made it, made like 50 times more features out of it, because JSON script just had these RSIs and RSI lags. So even that could be interesting as maybe a patch to JSON script, or we'll see. Maybe it's too many features for it to be a good example, but I think it might be potentially good, but I think he said it might have overfit or something, so I'm not sure about that. And then the other thing we did was update the validation data. So maybe you can explain how that works.
Yeah, sure. So one of the key differences between Numerai Classic and Signals is that you can submit tickers and you know what tickers they are. They're not obfuscated in any way. Because of that, time series things can be a lot more interesting. You know that the apple is this particular stock that you're submitting. It's changing over time. Whereas in Classic, it's all these obfuscated rows. You don't know what they correspond to. And previously, our validation data ended at, 2020, February 28th. And so for basically the past entire year, it was tricky to figure out, okay, what are these targets that we're trying to predict for? How do we even do time series against them? So that's why we made a priority to expand it up until the present day minus about 2 weeks, just due to data stuff. So that's there. Very happy about that.
Does that update every week as well?
Yeah. Every week from now, we'll continue to update, stay current.
So whenever you download the validation data now, you will get new targets for the last week.
Last week-ish. Yeah, just a little bit of a lag. Yeah.
Okay, a bit of a lag.
Yeah. So there's that. We're also looking to improving some of the other data stuff that we give to people. One of them being the public ticker map we give, which was like the validation data. That was a one-off thing we did, and that we've updated to make it automatically updating now. Similarly, the ticker map from Bloomberg tickers to Yahoo tickers was a one-off thing. I'm currently in the works of making this auto update every week. So anything that comes into Live Universe will have Bloomberg ticker to Yahoo tickers, but also for the old historical validation data sets. So even for tickers that may have changed names or this sort of thing, you can figure out what the current day Yahoo ticker for it is. So hopefully this validation data will continue to become more and more useful. Along those lines, we also had some users reporting that Taiwanese, Canadian tickers were iffy, not quite right with the Bloomberg ticker representations. Those have all been fixed, and that'll be going live Signals round open this Saturday.
Nice. So my understanding is also that the ticker map is it's on GitHub. Anyone can make alterations to it. So, is that true?
So there's a community ticker map, which was made from our public ticker map. So that went from Bloomberg tickers to Yahoo tickers, and then they were adding Alpha Vantage tickers.
Nice.
But this is built off of our official ticker map.
Oh, okay.
And so we want to update that to keep it current with everything.
Okay, so as Oz gets better, it helps get that downstream. Cool. And yeah, has anyone tried out any of these new things? So for example, has anyone looked at has anyone found that the targets that we now give for many more months than we used to has helped them in any way? Has anyone looked at it? We're getting one chat from arbitrage.
Bloomberg ticker with exchange code would be preferable to composite code.
Yeah, it's supposed to be exchange code, and it clearly isn't the way that arbitrage described it. Yeah, it's quite a mess, tickers. I mean, not many people would use tickers as a thing to join on, or as an ID, because of how messy it is. But we should, it's possible we could, we could just get better and better at it. And then eventually, and maybe in a couple months, everyone feels like, there's no issues with tickers, which would be great. So I'll look at the exchange code issue. But is it true that some of them are exchange codes and some of them are composite codes? Or how would you describe it?
Yeah, that's right. So the best example I can give is the Korean stocks. So they're all end in composite code, but there's 4 primary exchanges in Korea, and the universe is split between them. And so there's no way to map it directly to the exchange. And so that would be extremely helpful, because then we get an accurate map. And some of the European as well. I think it's Germany has a couple exchanges.
Yeah, that's the case with German stocks.
I mean, the US has a lot of exchanges too.
The US is the cleanest ticker map there is, though. That one's not really a problem because just about everybody uses the composite code. And but it would just be much more accurate to have the exchange code for cases like Germany. And there are more. I'm just ripping on some easy ones to point out too.
Yeah.
Okay. So exchange codes for everything.
Except
I think that would be a default that would be acceptable, because then we don't have to further interpret what the ticker should be.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
Now that there's a community ticker mapping and you're also updating the ticker mappings, what should people go to as a default? Or will you guys pull in new columns from the community ticker mapping? So if anyone downloads like the example predictions, they'll have an Alpha Vantage column, they'll have a Reuters column, or should it be the community that still pulls from you guys?
So we haven't made a decision on whether to pull in the community mappings, but I talked to I think it's Hell No on Rocket Chat, who originally started this, and he, like the Bloomberg to Yahoo tickers on that community ticker map reflect what's in the public ticker map, like the official Numerai one. So my understanding is we'll keep that consistent. Like for the Bloomberg tickers, the Yahoo tickers on there, those will always match between the two. And then Alpha Vantage and this sort of thing. If we think that's valuable and we think we can make it reliable enough, then we could take it in. My one worry is like there might be too many nulls in the Alpha Vantage column, or it might take like more work to maintain it to where we're happy with. But we're open to doing that.
What do you think, Jason? Do you think we should just almost have them be the same?
Yeah, I think there should only really be one, and it should be the widest one available. And it may be harder for us to contribute to your centralized one, but however that can be made easiest and people can contribute, I think would be the best.
One of the hard things is I think what's implied by our one is that you can use those tickers to upload a signal. So if you only had CDOL, you can upload that to us. But if you had Alpha Vantage, we would say, oh no, you got to give us one of the ones that's on the official ones, like Bloomberg ticker. So it would help you, like if you were joining Alpha Vantage data, it would help you to have the column, but it sort of we wouldn't be supporting it live, I don't think.
Although if the map is accurate and you guys are hosting it, you could always just support it. I mean,
yeah, I agree with that.
So we could just support it, you mean? Yeah. I guess.
And then because we're getting the ticker map from you, we know that it is okay because you're doing the same conversion that we are.
Yeah. Yeah, like right now in the moment, it sounds good to do for me. We'll probably make it happen. No promises right now. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good though.
We will also say, like, rather use Bloomberg. That's the one we support the most. You can use these others, and we'll try our best to join.
I think the lowest friction option would be to just do the Bloomberg exchange code in the short run, because you already have that.
What do you mean by that?
Well, instead of issuing the Bloomberg tickers with a mix of composite and exchange, stick with just exchange.
But do you really want to see, Google NYSE ARCA exchange? Like, no.
I can peer map that. Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Yep. Like I said, though, US is probably not necessary, but for every other, it is.
Okay, cool.
Why do you think we already have that?
In that case, yeah, that should just be like another column.
Yeah, maybe. You have it because if you have the composite, you have the exchange. If you don't, we have issues, I guess.
The other thing I heard was in the clubhouse yesterday, people were wanting like graphs for their validation diagnostics, like these Keemsum graphs or this sort of thing. So my understanding was, so like when am I getting these drawdowns with my tickers that I'm submitting? Is there, I don't know, anything that like I wouldn't be able to guess off the top of my head when I go to implement this?
It's probably the easiest thing to do is just expose the per era validation scores in the API, and we can do it ourselves. If you can make that available, that'd be super helpful. And then later add different functionality in the UI.
Okay, add it to API. Sounds good.
Yeah, it seems like a really significant thing for signals. I didn't quite realize, because you might not be submitting on the whole universe. And then you get this average and you're like, well, which part of the eras are pulling my average down? Where is my drawdown? Things like that seem like pretty major to know. What's your timeline like for this work and other things? Like it would be quite cool to get this something out. So for everyone else, Liam is 18, dropped out of college. He's like kind of everything he knows, he's like picked up recently about quant finance and everything. So, but he's pretty hardworking and he's been pretty helpful lately. So yeah, but what's on your agenda?
Yeah, I live to serve signals currently. So the agenda right now is getting this updated public ticker map going. Currently, I think it's fine to give spoilers about what's happening. That's why you guys come here. So currently the public ticker map is like 5.3K tickers is listed on it. I'm trying to bump it up to like 9.6K. So it'll cover more than just like the live eras that we've been through. And so this might mean that for like some of the much older stocks that have changed names and sort of things, like a few more inconsistencies there with like, oh, what's live and current. But I think it will be useful for when you're like training on this validation data, you're trying to figure out like, oh, what's going on here. That'll still be useful.
Wait, so you're saying that the validation data will now have much bigger universe?
Yeah.
Even though we only score some of the universe.
Score some of the universe, but this will be like when you're looking at this validation data from like eons past, like how do I even know what's going on here? What like maybe I'm trying to test some sort of method, right? That like works across many stocks. Oh, I might as well include these as well because it's from my unique signal, but it has changed over time. Is thinking here. So we'll expand it. We can also mark like these are the current live ones in the ticker map.
But wait, you can already submit on, if stocks aren't in our universe currently, they might still be in the historical universe.
Yeah.
But at least they represent what we sort of could have traded, like what our real trading universe is
Yeah.
back then. So why would adding more help? Adding more to the universe?
I think I understand. So we have this big historical universe, right? Currently the ticker maps are only for the more recent things, right? So if you want to do things with this, like further in the past,
gotcha.
right?
Okay, sorry, I didn't realize that. Okay, yeah. I mean, I guess we should try to pop. Is there no community historical ticker map?
No,
Okay.
none that I know of. So expanding that out, it's going up to like 9.3K is the gist here. And hopefully we'll be out this weekend. No promises there. The main thing that is getting worked on is getting all of these Bloomberg seedles mapped to Yahoo tickers, which will be done soon.
How will people know which one they're being scored on if you've got the universe bigger?
I think we have a live universe file as well, like example
no, but like
predictions.
Historically. So if historically there's 9,000 stocks in the historical, well they won't have we won't have targets for a whole bunch of them.
In the current live?
The historical.
The historical. That is in the historical data that we give out. That's why it's in the universe.
We don't. But but you're saying if you expand it to 9,000, some of them won't be in the universe.
But then when you join on the Numerai targets, it'll join to the proper tickers and just drop the ones that weren't in a specific era. So I think that should be okay.
I think it's fine.
I see.
We can discuss more later, but I think it makes sense. There's some like edge cases here that I need to think about from my point of view. But from there, the next priorities are one, the signals example predictions. There's a gap between like the number of tickers we say are available to submit for and how many there actually are. This gap has always existed. It was around 68,000. Now it's around 72,000 since we bumped up the validation data. But it's a lot more noticeable now because now the first digit is different rather than the second digit. So I'm going to be looking into that, figuring out what's going on there. And then right after that, trying to improve these validation, like per error validation things for our signals. So hopefully everything's coming fast and furious.
So so do you think where could like CubeSum fit in and a better API endpoint? I guess that involves Chris and
possibly. I'd say like less than a month, but hopefully sooner than that. I don't want to give unrealistic timelines before I've looked into something.
Cool.
Under promise and over deliver, right?
Yes, that's the plan.
Okay, any questions? Anything else we should talk about?
Or feature requests?
I had a feature request that I'd asked for a while ago, which is when you upload your signal, it shows you this list, the number of invalid tickers in your upload, right? So I was wondering if there's a way to maybe get a list instead of just a number.
Maybe at the same time we expose your error scores, we can expose all kinds of other things in the API, not necessarily to every user, because we actually used to have like a kind of like a pop-up that showed you every single invalid, and it was just like kind of annoying because a lot of
the API should be good enough. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good to me.
I can run through this Slido as well if there are no others.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, we don't actually have the Slido up in front of us.
Okay, the first question is from Suraj. He's asking, are the features used in signals for the feature neutral correlation and classic, the 310, are those features shared? And will signals correlation be affected after the increase to 3100 in classic?
Yeah, that's a good question. They are shared. I believe there might be some very small differences. For example, I don't think neutralized by the obfuscated features. I don't know if, MDO, do you remember? I think we neutralized by the unobfuscated features, but it's the same features.
Yeah, it's definitely the binned ones where the 5 binned features we are obviously that we're neutralizing by. I don't recall if it's the unobfuscated ones or not, but they're very similar. So
it might be, yeah. Yeah, if we do, and we are going to expand the number of features, we're getting close to having kind of a V1 of this internally. It won't be something we expose to users for a couple more months, but it's going like pretty much on schedule to have maybe like something like, I don't want to commit to a deadline, but something like end of May or end of June, end of December, something like that. But yeah, I think it does make it does make it reasonable to change the signal's target. But there's kind of new, there's sort of like a kind of rule of thumb with the community, which is like, do you want to be 100% neutral or 0% neutral? And people are like, neither. We want to be like 50% neutral or something like that. And I do think there's a good case to be made for making the signals targets like 50% neutral. So you might, and so one of the nice things about making it 0% neutral is like, you're not paid for any data we have already at all. But if we relax it a little bit, it's still a very hard target. It's still very neutral. But at least and I actually think that might increase the payouts on signals a little bit. Like if we do tests on everybody's current signals models, they probably perform a bit better without neutralization, right? Especially the good ones. So with a little bit of neutralization, they probably do well. So yeah, I think we'll have more features that we're neutralized by, but we'll neutralize by less.
So maybe to make sure I understand, the targets themselves may not be changing, but the features that we're being neutralized against maybe. So our scores will still change, but we may not have to retrain our models.
No, the targets are constructed from the features too, right? And they're constructed the same way. So the neutralization we do to the target is identical to the neutralization we do to your prediction, which means technically like any prediction you make is being optimized kind of to do well on the target. But yeah, I think I don't want to like signals is pretty new, right, compared to Numerai, and maybe it's harder to change your models and things like that. But my sense is there might be like some new beta target or whatever to test out that you can try, and we might show you historically how well you did on that target, and so you can see that it's better, but this is all like very speculative. We haven't even got to the point of having new data. It's possible that all the new data might not have a much of an impact on the targets. Maybe the targets under the more data is still 97% correlated with the current target. Okay, well then we won't change anything. But if it's not, we might. So I don't think it's like something we'll do until, like, even if the data comes out end of May, when would we change signals targets? Like August. So I think it's worth getting good at these targets, and everything you learn on this will be helpful with the new ones too.
Yeah, I think with enough heads up, that's totally fine anyway. What would be cool, we talked about it a bit yesterday, is multiple targets. You may only care about one, but we may be able to do multitask training and add some stability and different insights into the models.
Yeah, I kind of like that. I mean, I also wonder, I don't know what we could do. I mean, one of the things I spoke to Arbitrage about was it's a bit confusing signals. Like if you're just used to having modeling returns, like maybe the website should just say, this is your correlation with returns. Even though we don't pay you on that, it might still be useful to be like, oh, okay, good. I'm 5% correlated with returns, but I'm 2% correlated with their target. Because that's still useful to get good at being correlated with returns. And many other targets are still useful. Like you can't be perfectly correlated with our target and not be correlated with returns. So getting good at returns is going to help you. But yeah, we don't want, the main thing is to avoid, having lots of factor exposed models and country exposed models and things like that.
Okay, next question kind of answered. Would you provide our per era validation correlations after submission? And it sounds like that will happen. Mm-hmm. The next question, this is an interesting one from R. Smiley. If your predictions are neutralized to the main tournament features, would a model using the main tournament features with positive feature neutral correlation also do well in signals?
Interesting. So it's like would the example predictions of Numerai do well in signals?
Right, which we kind of talked about last time. Mike P said his models were using that, and we looked and the scores were basically 0, which we would kind of expect if you're being neutralized to those features. But if you have good feature neutral correlation to begin with, then
yeah. Well, this is why feature neutral correlation matters, because you would be if you can neutralize yourself to 0 and you still have feature neutral correlation, like Arbitrage with his models, you would do well on signals to that exact amount. So if Arbitrage uploaded his FNC models that had 0.03 FNC, that is actually pretty much identical to how well he would do in signals. The only difference, of course, is the time horizon is 7 days versus 7-2 versus 30 days. So he's like, well, in that case, give me the ticker map. We should add the Numerai obfuscated stock symbol to the ticker map. That would be interesting. So an interesting thing is kind of this also relates to MMC. MMC is neutralizing the signal by the meta model. So if we neutralized, so this is all getting pretty weird questions now, but if we neutralize a signals model by the meta model, that would be a more aggressive thing to do than feature neutralize it. And so you might have something like a 5% correlation with return, 3% feature neutral correlation, and then like a 1% meta model contribution. Because that one typically takes off even more. It depends, right? Your signal might not be very exposed to MMC, but exposed to one of our features or something, but that's roughly how it works. So I think Numerai, so we did think about this. We were like, well, maybe we should neutralize all of the signals models by example predictions, not by the features, but by example predictions. And that would in some ways be more intense, more aggressive, but it wasn't really what we're trying to capture. And the reason, by the way, there is anything left. If you neutralize a linear model by the features, there's nothing left, right? Because the linear model just learns coefficients of what to weight each feature by. But a nonlinear model can potentially have excess alpha after neutralizing everything out. And that's why, that's kind of the point of Numerai and why it's like especially for machine learning, because nothing linear has FNC. Did that confuse everyone?
The next question you may not be able to answer is Bloomberg your price provider for calculating the validation targets and scoring the live submissions?
Sorry, go ahead. Say that again.
Is Bloomberg your price provider for calculating the validation targets and scoring live submissions?
No.
I guess what this is really getting at is something we also talked about yesterday, which is all of these different data sources have just wrong data relative to each other. So arbitrage looked at the correlation of one-day returns between Yahoo Finance and CompuStat, and it was about 96%, which depending on your baseline could be good or bad. And you know, the ultimate ground truth is whatever your data provider's pricing is. But
yeah. So one of the things that happens with pricing data that is some of it's total return series and some of it's not. So we definitely work on total return series. If the stock pays a dividend of 2% or something, that counts in your return. So that's an important thing to note. Whenever you have a price series, you want to make sure you get the total return series. The other thing is splits are big. Like you might not count that the stock actually split, you know, right in the middle of the US trading day because it's trading in some other exchange, and there are all sorts of things that can happen there. So the data provider we use for this is kind of our most expensive data provider. And they really try to make sure that their total returns are correct, and split adjusted and dividend adjusted and everything else. And so that's actually why, you know, there's a delay in scores. Like if we're kind of scoring 2 days ago and it's like, well, why can't you just tell me how much the stock went up 2 days ago? And it's like, well, actually, if you want to get every single stock in the world and be split adjusted and dividend adjusted and stuff, you actually can't get it that quickly. So yeah, that's one thing to look for. I'm not sure about the two that compared, but I imagine there could be some of those issues, splits and total, whether it's total returns and involved. Dividends are reinvested.
We should write that down in the docs. I think your explanation.
Agreed.
Yeah, total return daily factor would be dividends are reinvested. That's what that assumption is. So I guess I just wanted clarification on that. That's what Crisp uses. That's the standard.
Yeah. Even our yeah, it is. But it's yeah. I mean, we're not tracking a portfolio that reinvests anything. That, you know, it has the cumulative. If you took the cumulative if you took the geometric product of all these returns, you would get the return that you would have had as a person holding the stock. That's the key thing. Similarly, if you're short something, we would be hurt by the dividend.
Right.
We would be responsible for kind of paying the dividend. So you've got to get all that stuff in, and that's a very painstaking process. And and a lot of data providers ignore that extremely important point.
Yeah, I would just say, for the sake of everybody here, Crisp has that formula on their website. Getting the adjustment factor, though, that's the hard part. So
yeah, so Crisp is, if you don't know Crisp, it's a very high quality US data set. A lot of academic research has done it on it, and because it's supposed to be very good, but it also doesn't capture the whole world. So that's its downside.
Okay, and Dagerhan also put in a link to Reuters stock data that's available for a pretty good price. That's at metastock.com. I'll put that in the chat. And then he's asking, will you maintain and publish a clean Bloomberg to RIC ticker map? So I guess this goes back to what the ticker map is going to look like in the future. Should the community still be maintaining it? How is it going to be multiple columns? And
So I guess my thing is I'm not familiar enough with like what matters in the ticker world yet, right? Like Alpha Vantage, RIC, this sort of thing. And so I guess my one worry is like every week we'd get like a new request to add a new ticker, and that takes like X hours, this sort of thing. So I'm down to add more as long as they're like enough people think they're useful and important. But if we start going to like more esoteric ticker formats, maybe that's better for like a community map.
So just pay the licensing fee and give us the seed all.
Yeah.
Liam, I think you should maybe start, playing signals.
Agreed.
Why don't you use the Quandl Siraj data? Venmo me, it's $50, and try to make one. And so you start to feel the pain.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Being a new beta user.
Yeah, and then tickers that I want might get added sooner.
Try to see how close you can get to the full universe yourself on the free data that's out there.
Yeah.
And see how many mismatches you have and everything else. I think that would be a very worthwhile exercise.
Cool.
I like that idea. I think you'll see like the benefit of adding columns for each data source and all that. The next question is, do you think a complicated ML prediction is strictly better than a simple measure?
What's a measure?
Probably a ranked factor, if I had to guess.
Well, yeah, I have a lot to say about this. First of all, any linear exposure to a factor. I mean, it really is crazy. Like there are massive hedge funds like AQR that just take on linear value exposure, linear momentum exposure, and they just like, you could do it yourself. You could create their model that manages $200 billion. You could make it in 35 seconds, and they know you can. They're not even hiding that it's that stupid. But they're saying, well, but this is a kind of cheap way to get exposure to these things that work really well over long periods of time or whatever. And then until they don't work, and then for like the last 3 years, AQR went from $500 billion to much less than 200 billion. So that's a lot of the academic research is in this AQR wrecked. A lot of the academic research is kind of on linear models. They just didn't really publish stuff to do with nonlinear models. And all the risk models are linear. So when you say complicated, it's like, yeah, you definitely don't want to be complicated. But so I actually think on normal data, so you just downloaded some data, and if you trained a linear model, it will probably outperform a machine learning model. That's kind of a crazy statement. It's like, why? Well, because if it's normal data and that's not regularized and pre-processed and got the right target, it's gonna overfit very, very badly. But if you can get all the data and the target right, suddenly machine learning completely overtakes linear models. And that's why Numerai spends so much time on our data and targets. That's the only thing we kind of talk about: new data, new target, new data, new target. Like, because that's the real game. And once we do that, then even the example predictions, as you know, on Numerai does extremely well. So I do think, you know, people want to be very careful using machine learning. But I think if you build a machine learning model that does well on signals in the validation, that's a very good sign, because those are neutralized to factors. So maybe even if you made a mistake on the data you had, you might still pick up some nonlinear patterns, and all your linear stuff that actually doesn't generalize well gets taken out before we score you anyway.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, my take, which take with a grain of salt, like what do I know? But if you are regularizing properly and you have the right data, a learner on top of that data is always going to be better than the data itself. Even if you're just learning to inverse the data, obviously it'll usually be more complicated than that, but a learner will figure that out as well, assuming you're not overfitting. The next is more of a request. If you would add simpler, more transparent, separate tournaments to drive adoption, because the opaque and the hard data barrier exists. So an example, US stocks only, raw returns, the FAMA 3-factor alpha as a target.
Yeah. US only does seem interesting. I mean, we started Erasure, remember Erasure Quant? Rest in peace. It had only US. Because at that time we weren't using our like real data source to score it. We were using, it was bad. And there's so many data sources that only apply to the US. And there's so many of the free ones apply to the US. And so there's definitely some feeling like we might want to do that. But the problem is, like, yeah, we want to pay people for providing, you know, what we need, and what we need is global. And so right now our feeling is like, well, US is most of the stocks. I think it's like half the stocks. If you did submit a US only model, you could still do well. And then you say, well, why are you not scoring us on why are you adding these 0.5s to the things we're not providing predictions on? It's like, because for the people who are providing predictions, they deserve the extra reward of going beyond the US. But I still think it's like a possibility or something. Maybe even just like a flag, that just like a little American flag that says this is a US only model. So, you know, even though its correlation's a bit lower, it's actually very good for the US or something. But I don't know, maybe we're like going, I don't know. I don't want to make it, you know, I certainly don't want every country. So yeah.
I like the idea of the raw returns or FAMA 3-factor alpha as a target. That goes back to the multitask training, even though you may only care about one specific target and we'd be scored against that. If we're provided these other targets, there may be a way to use them to just get a better score on the target you care about.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it. I mean, maybe we can even give a target which is just like rank returns. So it's not the raw returns, but it's just like the rank of returns or something, and show that on the website. But again, we wouldn't want to pay for that. We wouldn't want to make prizes to do with doing well on raw returns.
Right. Or different time periods. So let's say your target is this 4-day return with the 2-day lag. You can provide the 3-day return with the 2-day lag, the 2-day return with the 2-day lag, and that may help people predict the path to the ultimate target. And if you can predict each day before the ultimate target, you're probably going to add a bit to your Sharpe.
Yeah.
Next question is, could you brainstorm alternative data sets ideas?
I still don't have much except for that list that was put up on the forum, which has all the data sources from a user called Joaquin. So if you look that up, that's still a good thread, I think, with a lot of different data sources. Do you have any idea, Jason? I mean, what would you tell someone if they've built something quick with your Yahoo Finance scripts? What's the next best data set to get?
I think non-pricing data. Go on the internet, find some information, and build your own scraper. Because if you have to build your own scraper, chances are the data is going to be dirty. The dirtier the data and the more cleaning you can do, probably the better opportunity there is. So, like, I used to do things where I covered light bulb companies. So I would go to Home Depot and I would find light bulb SKUs and I would loop over every zip code and I would find how well the bulbs were selling day to day. And so something like that, you may not cover a ton of stocks that way, but the information you're getting is just, it's so unique. And I think it would really be helpful.
Imagine with thousands of Signals users running around looking at light bulbs and whatever else.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much out there, and the more work you do up front, the better it will be. What else? So like the Taiwanese stock exchange, they have a website where the companies have to report their revenues every month rather than just quarterly. So looking at data like that, you may have to build a scraper to do that. And that's probably my best suggestion outside of pricing data. Just be creative. So this question is definitely from arbitrage about using Bloomberg composite instead of exchange tickers. Next one after that is, would you consider scoring on a smaller subset of the universe since obtaining data for the full universe is extremely difficult, even impossible?
Yeah, same answer. I mean, it's like, I think don't feel bad submitting on half the universe. I think that's maybe something people should be okay with. Like, you can do super well if you have a 2% correlation on just the US that's reliable. You're gonna do fine on signals. You could be on top of the leaderboard, especially because everyone else is also struggling to get the rest of it, the rest of the data. But I do want to reward people who do manage to get it. They should be able to do a little bit better. So I would say, if you want to focus on the US, we don't mind, and you should. And maybe somehow that can be more clear, like that it's fine to do that.
Yeah, I think being filled in 0.5s for the stocks that you're not submitting isn't really all that bad. Like, on average, it won't hurt you. You'll have a lower average score, but it's not like actually harming you.
You'll also have a lower average burn, right?
Right. On a risk-adjusted basis, you're not being harmed.
So you could just stake twice as much.
Yeah, and so this is the last question in the Slido. Having a Numerai tournament-like structure where features are provided will remove the barrier to entry. I mean, you can mention and source free data rather than users bringing their own features.
Yeah, we thought about, like I said, I thought about maybe we should just give some basic data that actually is served up through the Numerai API that's perfectly joined with everything. But then we're like, but that is kind of what Numerai is, except we do it with the very high quality data and then obfuscate it, so we can do that. So I don't think it's like super valuable. And then yeah, I think this signals tournament is about getting some of your own data and being good at modeling. But I believe that if you just had US price data, you might actually be able to make something really good. Because there's so many technical indicators that you can construct. And we don't have any of those in our data now that we're neutralizing you by. So if you do find something like that, and again, even if you think that data by, yeah, anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, even if you're only really good at light bulb stocks, like you can ensemble that in to being just mediocre at a wider array of stocks.
The arbitrage asked, do you think technical analysis can really generate alpha? Do you think building lots of signals on price data can really generate alpha? No. Not after costs, but before costs.
Very, very glad to hear you say that.
Before costs, it can. And we pay you before costs on signals. So if you make something that has 8% return per year, but costs 12% to implement, we actually want you to build that for us, because that 8% we can figure out how to use without excessive costs. So because we'll blend it with our other stuff. So that's the game. That's why I think, yeah, it's not so bad to just have price data for the US.
Okay, that was everything from the Slido. It feels like there's been pretty good momentum in signals in the last couple weeks. So I'm excited to see where it keeps going.
Yeah, I hope you guys also noticed this quarter, we also put a lot of, kind of front end stuff to make it look more like Numerai, have all Numerai's features. And it's got really close. And even the back end is different. Like one thing I sort of said as a rule, if we ever make a feature on Numerai, that has to be deployed to signals the same time. And that kind of forced the engineers on the front end to connect them up. And so they use the same code and the same kind of components. So it should be very good going forward. I don't think it's ever going to kind of fall behind Numerai.
I got a question for you guys. Has anyone tried the signals compute setup yet? Are any of you guys on compute? Still submitting manual? Cool. Well, we have a signals example now. Very soon, we're going to have like a master example where you can have both the regular tournament and signals at the same time. But yeah, any feature requests, like kind of on the website, infrastructure side, doesn't not to do with data science?
I'm a GCP guy. I would love to be able to have some sort of like agnostic compute setup.
Yeah.
And maybe that is already possible with the webhook. I just wouldn't really know where to start.
Yeah. I think GCP example is also coming soon. So hopefully we'll have that by the end of the quarter, if not like sometime mid next quarter. Cool.
Well, thanks for coming, everybody. This was good.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, bye, everybody.
See you on Rocket Chat.